Hey Space Watchers, and welcome back here from Manchester. It's day number 1 at the UK Space Conference, and I couldn't be more proud to have the CEO of the UK Space Agency, Dr. Bate, now in his interview. Paul, how are you doing today?
Torsten, I'm doing all well. It's the first of 2 days of the Space Conference, so sort of feel the buzz already starting to drive forward the work we're going to do.
Just about to start.
Exactly right.
Great. Let's dive into it. The theme, Space for Growth. What makes this edition of the UK Space Conference particularly significant for the agency, for the entire sector, and for UK's international role? If you want to summarize that.
Well, growth is the single most important thing that the UK government is focused on. Been extremely clear about that with their missions. The most important one is the economic growth mission. And the UK Space Agency is there to drive forward the goals and ambitions of the UK government. But what's great about that is it's not as if it's a goal that is not shared around the world. And that's why the international side of our work is so important. Particularly for this conference, we're bringing that space for growth theme so that we get out of our own bubble a bit more actively. The space sector is growing. We have more people than we've ever had before in the UK space sector, now 55,000 people working there. But we don't exist in isolation. The whole point of the space sector is to drive benefits on Earth, to communities, to countries. So on the week that we've found out that on our latest data, the UK space sector is driving an extra £90 billion of GDP for the UK economy, underpinning now £460 billion of that economy. We've got something to celebrate, but we also know that space is fundamentally an inflection point. We're in an age of space, but the value of space is really growing. So it's good to get people together so we know what the next big drivers of growth can be.
You talked about breaking out of the bubble, and I think that's very important. I mean, in this conference we expect 1,900 attendees, and it's a paid conference. It's not free to access for everyone. I mean, it's free to access when you pay. So how do you bridge that with breaking out of the bubble? So how many people from the non-space sector do you expect to be here?
Well, you're right to say 1,900, which I think is a record for a UK space conference. It certainly beats even our expectations, which were pretty high. I can't tell you how many people are space professionals or from wider space. What I can tell you is that across the space agency, whilst we do a lot of work with the space sector, and we provide over £680 million of funding annually, one of the major programs that we run, is very deliberately, is the Unlocking Space program, because we fundamentally believe that you can think of the space value as 3 legs of a very important and sturdy stool. So the space sector, the supply side, but then the customer base, which is typically non-space, and the investor base. And we are passionate about bringing those 3 groups together. So at a conference, of course, anyone can join. But in parallel to that, we also run a whole series of events, funding programs, and ways to connect that are deliberately about the non-traditional space actors, if you like, meeting space people so that we unlock that value of space for the wider economy.
After drawing this picture of the economy, so maybe you can shed a light on the strategic priorities of the UK Space Agency to fulfill this goal of growth, and maybe also to shed a light on the usage and your relationship with dual use, because that's from agency to agency different.
So when we think about space and the benefits of space, we can break that down. And for example, international relationships are a benefit in their own right. The data that comes down from space for communities and for the general public is of value. And of course, science and long-range innovation are deeply important too. Our government cares about all of those, but on top, it has said the highest priorities that it wants the space agency and the space sector to contribute to are economic growth and national security. You mentioned dual use. So we will make sure we focus our funding and our energy, particularly on driving those 2 agendas forward. They've also said we shouldn't, as we give more funding, make that less focused. More funding means more focus. Focus on the things that the UK is either already globally leading at or actively can be. because of our industry, because of our academia, because of our regulatory environment and our financial sector, but also some of our unique geographical advantages. So, for example, launch from the UK is very important to this government, and so we're driving that forward in the Space Agency as well, because we have launcher companies like Orbex, Skyroar as well, and people like RFA and High Impulse and others from outside the UK wishing to launch in the UK. But we also have that unique geography of the spaceports. We've seen a launch from Cornwall. We're expecting to see launches from the Shetland Islands. So that sort of focus is what I think you should expect to see more of from the UK Space Agency as we drive that economic growth and national security agenda.
I will talk later with the Minister about the status update of the Scotland space activities.
Good.
So, another topic, EU space law just came out, or the space law draft to be precise. And that steered a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions across Europe, and I'm quite sure also here in the UK. From the UK perspective, what is the impact engagement that you see with this draft?
Yeah.
And I know it's very early to ask this because the usual answer I get from people I talk to, we are assessing it, but give me something.
So, first, it's a draft, it's a long draft, and we will do it properly. We will look at it carefully. But I think everyone understands this is a very important piece of draft legislation. And when I talk around the European Space Agency table, for example, with my colleagues across Europe who run their own space agencies, we're all, for our shared and different reasons, very focused on it. The one thing I would reflect on is clearly there is a strong focus on the internal market and creating regulatory standards. Understood, and in lots of cases there is very strong alignment between what the Commission wants on space sustainability and what the UK has also been driving for. So we're really grateful to see that set out in the draft. However, we know the fundamental challenge that faces Europe is around the ability to compete globally in space. So we want to make absolutely sure that our sector is able to compete. We want the best technologies, the best satellites, the best ground segments to be able to be the ones that are providing the services. So of course we'll want to look carefully at that aspect of it as well.
I think with that you pointed already to a number of the key questions in it: competition, competitiveness, innovation versus Fortress Europe, and so on and so on. I mean, there are a number of arguments, pro and con, for it, but thanks for this initial insight.
Well, I was actually going to say, sorry to keep going, but I think it's a really important subject. You asked us if we're studying it carefully. We are, but it's not the only thing we study carefully. So we look carefully at the OECD reports that look at, for example, the amount of money that is invested in space, particularly in civil space, by different countries, and we compare that to size of market. And just as one observation, we know that even though, for example, the US is by far the largest civil spender in space, let alone on the defence side, but also does really well on the market. It captures disproportionately the market. Some European countries don't have that same ratio. The percentage of their global spend is, in terms of their investment, is not matched by the percentage of the market captured. The UK is in the fortunate position of being on a 5-to-1 ratio. So we have around 5% of the global market for 1% of the investment. Now, I would never argue that those figures are accurate to the second significant figure, because these are collected national statistics, but nonetheless, I think it just shows that when you take a commercial focus to space, as the UK does, and other countries have as well, you get that payback because it is a market.
Absolutely. Let's talk about something that will happen later this year, the Ministerial conference. I know it's a very surprising question, but can you shed a light on what we can expect from the UK, what you want to bring in, and so what do you hope for the progress of the entire dynamic conversation that we will see there?
So I remember the days when it was sometimes in the UK, perhaps as a result of things that had happened in the past, an important conversation was, what does the E in ESA really stand for? I'm so pleased that those days are long gone. And what we focus on now is the outcomes, the benefits. course, like all member states, we will focus on what the value is to our country, and we've talked about that already in economic growth, national security, the unique capabilities that the UK wants to grow. But we also recognise that we are a founding member of a 23 nation states club, if you like, and that we have many missions where we are part of a shared endeavour. So, money is tight across Europe. There are big choices to be made. I know ESA understand that and are having to work through what that means in each of the domains that they are in. But we will go in open-minded to what ESA are putting on the table, including some programs that have come a little bit later than others. So we will scrutinise those. We'll make sure we understand where the UK taxpayers' money is best put. We understand there are particular missions that where we have had leadership. To take one example, the Vigil mission on space weather. That's one area, of course, to protect the nation and the world's global critical national infrastructure. We take that very, very seriously. So we'll be wanting to make sure that missions like that are well funded and well managed. But of course, with 5 months to go, I'm probably not going to reveal exactly how much money we're intending to put in any more than other country would. But I would just like to say a big thank you to our German colleagues for hosting in Bremen this year and the work they're doing to make it a more efficient and effective ministerial. Because what we really want is a good negotiation that leads to good outcomes. It's not actually the money, the headline number that matters. It's the benefits that we can bring as a result of this ministerial.
And I'm quite sure Germany has chosen Bremen in November, especially for you guys, to match with the weather. Bremen is all about the weather. Yes. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time here. I know that's very valuable here during the conference. You have a packed schedule. With that, Space Watch out.